All right, thank you, everyone. I appreciate you coming here today. From before the time I took office, I have been reviewing our state's finances, the situation we're facing, and the options that we have for the coming fiscal year. I've committed to developing my first executive budget in an open and transparent way, with input from across government and from the people that I serve. During my transition, I heard directly from 9,000 New Jerseyans, community leaders, business owners, parents, teachers, union members, and more, about what's on their minds, and I bring that with me to this work. By the time we finalize my budget, my team and I will have discussed it with every member of leadership and reached out to every member of the legislature, because this is a process that we're all doing together. I've met with 7 cabinet departments responsible for over half of our current budget, and I've instructed all departments to identify potential savings. Today, I just had the latest of a dozen weekly budget meetings with our new treasurer, someone you all know and who has decades of experience, Aaron Binder. We're here now because I want everyone to have a clear picture of our state's finances before I release my plan for the next fiscal year in less than 2 weeks. Bottom line, we're facing a serious structural deficit. We all know Trump's funding cuts will cost the state hundreds of millions of dollars next year, slashing health care and housing, food aid and foster care, schools and infrastructure. We know the COVID relief party is ending after 6 years of cash flooding in from Washington and helping paper over some very real fiscal problems. And let's face it, for decades, previous administrations have allowed for business as usual in Trenton and failed to solve things long term. We've seen too many one-offs, too many temporary fixes. I promised a different kind of leadership. So now we're staring down an estimated $3 billion structural deficit. If we do nothing, our entire $7.2 billion surplus will be gone by the budget year that begins July 1, 2027, and will be another $750 million on top of that in the hole. And since our Constitution requires a balanced budget, that would trigger far worse outcomes, including cuts to everything from school funding to pensions. It could mean credit downgrades and tax hikes, causing real pain to New Jerseyans. I won't let that happen. I refuse to put off for tomorrow what we have to fix today. Washington isn't coming to save us. Trump is only making things worse. We have to stand on our own 2 feet and make some tough choices. But that's fine. I've been doing hard things for most of my life, and that's what I was elected to do now. So to be clear, we're not going to raise taxes on New Jerseyans. We are going to look for savings, because together we need to fix Trenton's historic spending problem. And I'm going to stay laser focused on investing in 3 things that voters sent me here to do: to lower costs for working families, to protect our kids, and to make our government more transparent and accountable. And transparency is a big part of why we're here today. In my campaign and first executive orders, I've committed to building a government that's more accountable and focused on results. As part of that, in April, we'll be launching a pilot for the public budget tracking tool that I promised, allowing anyone to track state spending online throughout the year. It'll live within a bigger New Jersey report card designed to make it easy for people to see where their tax dollars are going and what families are actually getting in return. Ultimately, the best way to demonstrate our commitment to transparency is to hold ourselves accountable. In the actual budget, making sure it's clear, direct, and doesn't paper over problems. And in the way we present it, talking to you directly now and in the weeks and months to come. I'll share my plans in depth at the legislature on March 10th, but I wanted to be direct and make people aware of the challenges that we're facing ahead. Now I'll turn things over to our treasurer, Aaron Binder, who will provide a few more details, and I look forward to talking more with you all about how we build a long-term, strong fiscal foundation here in New Jersey. Thanks so much.
Thank you, Governor. It's a pleasure to be here today with all of you as we craft the governor's inaugural budget message. I'd like to start by simply laying out the current budget situation. The state is projected, as the governor mentioned, to finish the current fiscal year with a $7.2 billion surplus. While that may sound like a big number, and as you'll see on the chart, the reality is that we are projected to entirely deplete the surplus and more in just 2 fiscal years. Let me repeat that again, it's an important point. We are projected to entirely deplete the surplus in just 2 years. We're facing a significant structural deficit that is projected to continue to grow over the next 2 fiscal years. So by the end of FY 2027, the $7.2 billion surplus would drop to just above $4 billion. And at the end of 2028, that surplus would be, as you see in the chart, negative $752 million. The Constitution requires us to have a balanced budget. So we clearly need to make major changes to veer off this path. We are facing this approximately $3 billion structural deficit for several reasons that I'll go into. First reason is projected budgetary growth in several critical areas. Current projections include significant growth in Medicaid, school funding, public workers' compensation and health benefits, and direct property tax relief. The second reason, as the governor mentioned, is action at the federal level. President Trump's H.R. 1 legislation will result in well over $100 million in added state costs in the FY 2027 budget, and the impact of many of the more painful cuts, particularly to our state's healthcare systems, are not scheduled to go into effect until later in 2027. The current structural deficit projections at this point do not factor in adjustments that will need to be made to account for the loss of the additional, or the loss of the additional federal funds. The third reason for the structural deficit is that the state budget continues to be detrimentally impacted by the decisions made in the past. An example of this is the full pension payment, which is scheduled to be a little over $7 billion next year. That pension payment, if the pension payments in the past had been made, would be a little over $1 billion. So the state and this next budget will have a $6 billion penalty for the missed pension payments in the past. Another point about detrimentally impacting this budget with decisions in the past is that the debt service schedule includes over $500 million from the 1997 pension bonds. Again, over $500 million from the 1997 pension bonds, and those are scheduled to continue for another 3 years. So Governor Sherrill's first 3 budgets will include over $500 million from those bonds. The final point on the structural deficit and our approach to solving it is simply that many of the solutions used in the past are not available to us anymore. Federal funds are exhausted, the debt defeasance and avoidance account has essentially been depleted, and many of the other one-time solutions have been used up. We need to focus on finding a way to run government more efficiently, more effectively, and that requires us to look carefully at ways to reduce costs. The administration will present its plan to address these issues on March 10th. And it's important to note that the budget the governor proposes is only the first step in the process. This is a collaborative, deliberative process, and working closely with our partners in the legislature, we will build a fiscally sound budget. Thank you.
Do we have any on-topic questions?
We're projecting in 2028 the structural deficit to be around $4.5 billion.
What is the increase there? Is that just trend?
It's just mostly at this point with those kind of out-year projections are just simply trend. A lot of the same cost drivers I mentioned earlier.
Okay. But is that just going to be general growth, or are you seeing expiring revenues going into 28?
It's a lot of general growth, and it's mostly just projected growth to continue. Yeah, the additional projected surplus is mainly based on just updated revenue projections. Like we've done, this year has been a little better with revenue. Gross income tax has exceeded our projections. Corporate business tax is below projections, and sales tax is on target. So really, it's mainly from gross income tax exceeding expectations.
Governor, you said that the upcoming budget process, there will have to be tough choices. There will be what are some things that you guys cut?
I'm going to outline that in my March 10th budget address. Right now, what I'm doing is setting the table so that people can anticipate that this is going to be a very tough budget season. And I would add to some things that Aaron said. I think on top of, and part of the reason I think we're facing this is we've had some structural problems. We've had years of, for example, before the last administration, not making full pension payments. To give you a sense of what that looks like, you heard, we're paying about $7 billion into our pension system. New York runs a larger pension system. They pay $1.5 billion a year. So the reason we're laying this out is because we're going to make those tough choices, because this is really mortgaging our kids' future. If we don't make those choices now, we are going to be forced to by our Constitution in some cases, but also we are forcing our kids to take on this debt, and it's just not fair. So that's why we're setting this table now for these what we're going to discuss on the 10th.
Do you think that freezing current state fund, any current state money that's already appropriated but not yet out the door?
We are going to lay everything out on March 10th that we anticipate doing.
In the past, the budget has been signed by the governor at the end of June without the 12% surplus needed to fund J&J. Would you sign a budget at the end of June that doesn't hit that 12% surplus if it's written into the budget language to allow for it to come later in the appropriation process?
As I said, this is going to be a budget that we all work on together, and tough choices are going to be made. And every choice of spending has an equal and opposite choice of cuts. So that is going to be something that we are going to present on March 10th, my vision of where I think we should go. But I'm also working closely with the legislature, so we anticipate that we will have a negotiation at that point. But at the end of it, and I've spoken to leadership in both the Senate and the Assembly, at the end of it, we all realize that if we don't make these hard choices now, again, we are creating huge opportunity costs. I mean, imagine if we weren't paying $7 billion into the pension. That's money for utilities. That's money for health care. That's money for schools. That's money for, apprenticeship programs. I mean, all of those ways we drive opportunity are being mortgaged if we don't take some hard looks at this now.
Your predecessor really touted credit upgrades as evidence of fiscal strength. Are you worried that there could be downgrades as this is used to roll out?
Well, certainly if this is what we do, yes, we'll definitely have credit downgrades if this is our plan. What we are fighting for is to continue to run this state in a fiscally responsible way.
Right. You said you don't expect tax increases, but do you expect cuts to stay in J or revisiting the school funding formula?
Again, we are going to lay out exactly what we anticipate would be the best path forward on the 10th.
Probably another one for Aaron. Can you talk a little bit about the revenue projections that you had from the January projections?
I mean, I think what I just laid out, so income tax is up significantly, corporate business tax is down, sales tax is on target. The other bigger one is the pass-through business alternative tax. That's also doing very well.
But they're still trending around, or your expectation is they're still like about 4%?
At this point, yeah, I mean, yes, overall, yes.
And then for the governor, I know that you campaigned on increasing some tax credit, for example, the child tax credit. Is that something that you're now looking to save for future years, or do you squeeze those things that will reduce state revenues into one of these sooner budgets?
So when I said I was meeting with so many of our cabinets, that was to discuss just those things. I went to them and said, look, bring me where you can cut. And then there are those areas that we are focused very much on, and much of that has to do with driving opportunity in the state. So we are trying to balance all of that. And that's what I call a fiscally responsible budget, when you are looking at programs that aren't delivering, aren't working, and then investing in those programs that deliver best, evidence-based, et cetera.
Bill, could you just explain what your philosophy will be in this budget for so-called Christmas tree items or fork spending, which is the last-minute add-ons in the budget?
I'm going to lay all that out on March 10th.
That's my question. The idea of increasing transparency at the end of June in recent years, there hasn't been a lot of transparency relative to the last minute changes because we're up against a hard deadline. Do you plan on asking the legislature to submit you a final version of the budget prior to getting up against that hard deadline on transparency? We're talking about transparency where transparency also means collapsing.
So I've been a member of a legislature, and I can ask that question. It's usually the hard deadlines that force the hard choices. So we will see where we get, but what I am committed to doing, and we'll start this in April, and this was a campaign commitment, was to make, produce some transparency there. So people can go and see where the budget is. People can see a report card of how different programs are working, and we are going to continue to grow that so people can track how money is being spent. Thank you.